Hello everyone. In today's session, we will see GitLab Docker Executor. This will be the theoretical session. In this session, we will see benefits of using Docker Executor, its use cases, what are the prerequisites, what if you have not installed Docker on the guest operating system, then what will be the error that you will face, what will be the flow once you have pushed the changes or push the data to the repository, and where you can mention that with which Docker image you want to work with which Docker image you want to work with. So let's see that. First is the benefits part. So with the help of Docker Executor, it saves the time of installation and configuration of the software. We don't need to search for specific version of any software. Docker is kind of plug and play component. So you just need to pull the image of specific software, run it with the container, and execute the commands that you want to execute. Let's say if you want to execute Python commands or if you want to execute Python script, just pull the Python image, run it with the container, and execute the Python script. Use cases. So here I have mentioned very specific and very few use cases, but it can be much more than it. So as I have mentioned earlier, just pull the Python image and execute the script with running Python image in the container, pull any DB image and run that particular image in the container and execute any SQL commands and store the data. Even you can do the communication between different image containers to transfer the data and other vital information. For example, you can create web scraping Python script in Python image container, and then whatever the data that you have extracted from web scraping, you can transfer that data to the, let's say, PostgreSQL image container, and you can store that particular data in PostgreSQL database. Prerequisites. So to use Docker Executor, first of all, the main prerequisite will be .gitlab-ci.yml file, which will contain the steps to deploy the build on the guest machine. Definitely, you will need a repository as well. Another important and compulsory part of this prerequisite is to install Docker on guest machine. Third is the installation of GitLab runner on the guest machine. This is the machine on which you want to deploy the CI/CD pipeline. And finally, you need to register GitLab runner with Docker executor. So make sure it will be the Docker executor and not docker-ssh or docker ssh file, something like this. It will be only Docker executor. Now, in case if the Docker has not been installed on the guest machine, you will get an error when you push the changes to the repository, and when CI/CD pipeline will start to work, you will get the error. So this error will be lookalike as shown on the screen. So this is the error that I have got on the Linux machine. So if the Docker instance is not running on the guest machine, or if the Docker has not been installed on guest machine, you will face similar error such that is the Docker daemon running cannot connect to the Docker daemon. So this will be the error in case Docker instance is not running or not installed on the guest machine. This will be the same error, but it is just on the Windows machine. Now the flow. So what will be the flow once you have pushed the changes to the repository? So the flow will be like this. The first step will be to pull GitLab runner helper image from Docker Hub. What will be the use case of GitLab runner helper? So it will be used to clone repositories and upload artifacts, as well as it will help to handle Git artifacts and other cache operations. So first of all, the GitLab runner helper image will be pulled from Docker Hub. Second step will be under Docker folder, under volumes folder, the Git repository will be pulled. So on Linux, location of volumes folder will be where lib docker volumes. Whereas on Windows, this location will be different, such that this will be the lengthier path like wsl.localhost then Docker desktop data. So I will show you where you can find this volumes folder on Windows. So based on the installation on the particular operating system, the volumes folder location will be different. So in this volumes folder, GitLab runner helper will pull the repository. Third step will be whatever the Docker image you have mentioned in your .yml file or config.toml file, it will be pulled from the Docker hub. Fourth step will be the pulled Docker image then will run having Git repository folder mounted to it. The Git repository folder that GitLab runner helper image has pulled, it will be stored under volumes folder, and again this Git repository folder will be mounted to the Docker image that we are going to pull and that we have mentioned in .gitlab-ci.yml file or .config.toml file. And finally, the Docker image will run the steps mentioned in .yml file with the mounted Git repository folder. So on Windows, as I have mentioned, the location will be something like this as shown on the screen. On the left pane, you will get a section like as shown over here. It will be section like Linux, and within Linux, you have this Docker desktop and Docker desktop data. So your volumes folder falls under this Docker desktop data section. So in the second image, you can see that its path is Linux Docker desktop data, this one, then version pack data, then community, then Docker, then volumes. Again, within these volumes, if I go to this, let's say, particular runner and this particular folder, then you will see that this is my CI/CD 21 demo GitLab runner repository, which has been pulled with the help of GitLab runner helper image. So this is the GitLab repository under volumes folder on Windows. Finally, there are two ways to mention Docker images that we want to use. First is the config.toml file of the runner. So on most of the Linux machine, it will be under etc GitLab runner config.toml. On Windows, it will be the folder that you have created while installing the GitLab runner on Windows. So on my machine, I have installed GitLab runner under the C directory under the GitLab-runner folder. So over there, I have got this config.toml file. Now, whatever the Docker images you have mentioned under config.toml file for that specific executor, it will be applicable for all the pipelines those are going to use that specific GitLab runner. So let's say on Windows, I have installed and registered some XYZ GitLab runner. So in whatever CI/CD pipeline, I have mentioned that I want to execute CI/CD pipelines with the help of that XYZ GitLab runner. All those GitLab pipelines will be able to use the Docker images mentioned in that XYZ runner executor section. So config.tml file will have different sections for every executor registered on the same guest machine. I will show you that image in the next slide. And another way to mention Docker image is .gitlab-ci.yml file. So it will be either a project or a task specific. And for multiple tasks, you can specify multiple Docker images. So here, this is the example of config.tml file where I have registered two different runners. One is this Windows MVN and another one is Windows Docker. And over here you can see that I have used executor Docker and my default image is Python latest. So in whatever GitLab pipelines I have mentioned that I want to use this Windows Docker runner, in all those pipelines this Docker executor will be used, and within that Docker executor this Python image will be used by default. So that's it for the day. Thank you everyone for watching this video.